Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Rostermania update to reaching a critical point at the moment, and it seems Aspas out of Loud is once again a realistic possibility. They were talked about a month or so ago that Loud were not looking so good, especially leading up to the World Championship, and Aspas might well be out of the team as soon as the season ends. They did very well Loud at the World Championship, got top 3 at the end of the tournament, wasn't enough though to get to the finals or win the entire thing. That now leaves Aspas in an interesting position, especially with Sentinels possibly interested and rumours emerging that he's potentially more likely to be gone than staying on the Loud roster. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, Sunset is now officially in the competitive rotation, which is, unfortunately, as many people would say, Ascent, Haven, Breeze, Bind, Split, Lotus, Sunset. I don't think it's the best map pool we've ever had, and to be fair, Sunset, I've seen some pretty game-breaking bugs and glitches that are possible, which are not yet resolved. And there's also a lot to talk about Breeze. I've very mixed opinions on this. Some people say that they really hate this new version. They think it's just taken out lots of the long sightlines that made it challenging and have just got rid of it and is way too easy. But and maybe that's possible. And Zekid even says, can we just permaban Breeze between the franchise teams? Some players like it, some players don't like it. We'll probably need a bit more time just to see. There was a patch update as well, kind of making a couple of changes to Astra and Gecko. Nothing crazy, just fixing some issues, changing some things around. But one of the big talking points we've got to dive into is the changes to the VCT 2024 roster construction rules. So there is a transfer window that begins in 4 days' time when players can be effectively officially signed for the new season, and it ends on July the 15th, 2024. Teams can have a minimum of 5 players. So there is no longer a mandate to have a substitute player. That's no longer necessary, which is really interesting. I don't think it's a massive surprise per se. It does allow two-way players to be introduced. So these are players that are signed to your contract on a tier 1 team, but you can also effectively loan out to play in challenges. So this kind of can replace the idea of a substitute entirely, that sub can actually play in tier 2 the whole time, rather than, just sit on the sub bench doing nothing all season. So I think this can be a good thing. And it also means the teams, if they want to, can save some money by not having to pay the minimum for a substitute player to sit on the bench and do nothing. Now, there's also this safe harbor thing that we'll get into here in just a second. So this is the slightly more in-depth detail here from Bodork, and he also says, I think for some legal reason, this legacy exception has now been removed. But to me, the interesting part is the roster submission deadlines and roster locks themselves. This past season, I found it very frustrating that teams that wanted to make changes, Carmine Corp, plenty of others, just really couldn't without, without doing something a little bit. You could get emergency substitutes, but outside of that, there wasn't really any options to make changes theoretically. So, now I think it just makes more sense if teams are able to make more changes when they want to, because otherwise it's difficult to actually win the World Championship, for example. Unless you have a player like Demon 1 already signed onto your sub bench and you can bring him in anyway, and there's no issues with that. So there's a roster submission deadline, which happens for Masters 1 on January the 8th, for Masters 2 on March the 18th, and for Champions on May the 27th. And that is roughly 2 months before each of the respective tournaments. So, it's a pretty big deal. Like 2 months you've got to stick with the same roster up until the tournament itself. But that seems okay to me, and it means that January the 8th is when the teams have to confirm their roster. But after Masters 1, they are free to make changes until March the 18th. So I guess if you don't qualify for Masters 1, sure, you can make a change by March the 18th. But of course, Masters 1 is ongoing through March the 18th. So if you are at Masters 1 and you fall flat on your face, you still might have to have the same team going forwards, but then you could make a change after that, theoretically. So it's better than last year. It might not be perfect, but I do think it's good that teams are able to make more changes than they were previously. So the mandatory 6th man is now removed, and also only 1 import is able to play, and apparently China has this rule now as well. So only 1 import from another region able to play in your region, which is, I think it used to be 2, right? And now it's just down to 1, so that's a pretty interesting change. These player loans, the two-way players that we discussed before, are also now confirmed, and this is kind of what's said on the matter. And then also these affiliate teams where you can have a relationship with kind of a challengers team, which I'm not sure if anyone's actually going to go in for based on what we heard recently. Now, this is the safe harbor idea, where if a player is dropped outside of a transfer window or released outside of the transfer window, they will be given 14 days to sign another VCT team, sign with another VCT team. It's probably in reaction to what happened with Ye, the idea that Ye was dropped by Cloud9 and there was no way he could join another tier 1 team, although teams would have wanted him and could have got him if this rule had been in place. So yeah, that's pretty nice to see that even if there is a roster lock, if someone gets dropped and then the transfer window is over for them, there's still a period they can actually join as like a bit of an exception. So that is the situation as it stands. And then of course, as we saw, there's a roster lock during and, you know, for those 3 VCT global events. There was also some big drama going on yesterday as well with regard to this clip. So this guy here, quite clearly, is just stream sniping. So he just goes to the Sabrosa stream or whoever that was, and then finds him, goes through and just takes him down. And even at the end of the clip, you can see the same thing where he just tabs back onto the stream and then even drops the thanks for watching. Now, you know, this is pretty funny, but at the same time, you know, if you're blatantly stream sniping like this is effectively cheating, is it not? And as Nismo says, stream sniping like this should be taken seriously, literally cheating. Hope this guy pays the price for it, because you don't really want the players to have to put on massive delays on their streams to not get sniped. It's really just not a great situation. It's maybe where I can think about what they do about that going forward. Now let's talk rosters, because big update as well yesterday from Giants. Very surprising announcement that Rhyme, their IGL, has decided to actually retire from competition and will focus on his studies going forward, which is kind of wild to think about. But yeah, that is the plan for Rhyme. So wishing him the best, but that of course means they will need a new IGL and an entirely new team really for Giants going forward. Now Evil Geniuses, as we have just seen, you no longer need a substitute, and Evil Geniuses definitely benefited this past year from having a 5-man substitute roster that they could practice against behind the scenes. That worked for them, but all of those players are now getting released going forwards. The likes of Icy and of course others such as BCJ. So we'll see if EG go down the same route and decide to sign like an entirely new team of 5 to practice against their main roster. They probably won't, right? I think the plan is with their 10-man roster was to find the best 5. They found the best 5, and very much so the best 5. So now they're moving on. It leaves teams like, or players like BCJ in a difficult position. Well, okay, he's released, he's UFA, so he can join anywhere. He goes through a big statement here discussing the players that he was with. Screwface as well has been linked recently to Cloud9, which is pretty interesting. And yeah, says hopefully VCT 2024 is better for him than this season was, where he was on the team, then he was benched, and it actually worked out rather well for that roster. Now, Flynn has come out with his latest off-season spreadsheet. There's one interesting point here on a kind of EMEA on Ardis, because Ardis is gone from NRG, there's no doubt about that, and he's going to go back to EMEA. He was actually linked briefly to Na'Vi, but apparently he has many offers in EMEA, and therefore it's not necessarily just Na'Vi and the return to kind of FPX as it used to be that's now Na'Vi. That could be on the cards for him, with CNED leaving that team, we believe. But some of the most interesting parts of this to me is this update with regard to Aspas. Now you guys can see here the players that are in white, based on, you know, yesterday's spreadsheet to today's spreadsheet, are the same likelihood. But if players are in, let's say, you know, red here, then it actually lowers the chances that they will stay, at least based on what Flynn believes. So part of that is actually Chet. Now he talks about Chet and says that if SOM and FNS stay, so we don't know what the decision is going to be yet between SOM and FNS, right, and the NRG side, and Crashies and Victor, but it's quite clear that it's one or the other. And Chet apparently is taking the side of Crashies and Victor. So if SOM and FNS are chosen to stay by even management further up than Chet as the coach of the team, then Chet probably goes as well. I think that's the less likely outcome than Chet staying as coach with Crashies and Victor, but that's still very interesting nonetheless. But then we get into the point around Aspas, right, and the fact that Aspas has now gone from very likely to be on the team to just possible, you know, like not even necessarily super likely, but just maybe it's going to happen, maybe it's not. And this aligns a little bit with what we heard some time ago now, that there was friction there between Sadak and especially Les and Aspas. Now, they did very well at Champs. Top 3 was better than I expected, given the supposed drama that was going on. But even then, is that enough to keep the team together? Not necessarily, especially with Sadak maybe in conversations with NRG to leave. It wouldn't be a massive surprise if Aspas was to go. Now, where would Aspas go if he was to leave Loud? That's a big question. He would have lots of interest. And actually, Sentinels in this video yesterday did, you know, so Sassy has the wheel here that gets spun. And on this list, you've got the likes likes of Zek, Shroud was on here, Rob, their CEO, was on here, but also Aspas was spotted on here. Now, obviously Tarek's on here. It's just a bit of a joke, but still, it's interesting to see Aspas on there because he was linked to the team. There was a link going down that possibly Sassy, Pankard, and Aspas, because they're all good friends, could team up together on Sentinels. But if that was the case, TenZ would probably be gone. And is that likely? Maybe not, right? Let's be honest. And it feels like TenZ, at the moment, seems like he's going to stay. But again, this was the big talking point from Rod/Breslau before Champs, that Aspas is going to be gone from Loud and TenZ is going to be gone from Sentinels. And now, over the last day or so, we're now starting to hear, yeah, Aspas might in fact be gone from Loud. So maybe things are coming around as we might have expected them to, but you just never really know. There's also talk about Zellsis, because if he doesn't go to Sentinels, which feels less likely, and he's not going to be on Cloud9, and 100 Thieves are probably going to also be offering, minimum salaries or whatever Cloud9 are offering. 100 Thieves are probably doing the same. So maybe Zellsis needs to consider his options elsewhere. EMEA, even APAC, right, could be an interesting option. So definitely ones to keep your eye on for plenty of these players. But very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.